wins that they want. I think there's a lot of good there, and I don't think burning it down is the best approach. But here you mentioned a new potential coalition, and I think sort of lay out a prescription as to how to go forward, and I'd like to ask you about it. And again, we'll make the link to the full show available so that no one mischaracterizes anything.
Khanna and Thomas Massie working together against the interests to compel the files. What do you think that has, a 90% approval rating? If you had progressive Democrats and nationalist Republicans working together, let's say to compel the release of the Epstein files, what kind of approval rating do you think that has? 90%? And what if they got together and they opposed foreign aid to Israel? What approval rating do you think that would have? 90%? Do you think that that Republicans or independents running under that brand, do you think that that would become more popular or less popular over time? 4 becomes 8, 8 becomes 16. It snowballs. And we need to propel someone into the White House that is just a populist. If the right can come down on health care and on a social safety net and maybe on some subsidies for education, and if the left can come down on the anti-white open border stuff and they can agree that we have a country, that party will win 90% of the vote and rule for a century. That's the compromise. That's the populist compromise.
Welcome back, thinkers. This is Peacemaker. So Steven Crowder and Nick Fuentes are on the same side who fundamentally disagree on what to do next. I like Nick. I feel his frustration. He speaks to millions of people with this very frustration. But implementations are not his strong suit. He crafts fantasies and he doesn't back them up with data. He basically told us that a coalition of Democrats and Republicans can get 90% approval and they will agree to things like cutting aid to Israel. Like in which country? Because it's not this one. So he's taking his position and projecting it onto you, 330 million people, and call it a strategy. And watch what happens next, because Steven Crowder will methodically demolish Nick's positions.
Okay, and I think you were, you articulated that pretty well. I would say Epstein already has a coalition. Everyone voted to release the files except Clay Higgins, who is a punchline, deservedly so. Like, that's the first time everyone knew Clay Higgins. Like, he really must love pedophiles. I wish I loved anything as much as he loves defending sex islands. I would like to hear your prescription for how that works, because I would say this. If the only compromise was the left on immigration, and if I believe that there was any semblance of a reality in which they compromise on immigration, and compromising on free markets to varying degree, okay. But what do we do with a Khanna on the Second Amendment, on the First Amendment, on transing the kids, on reparations that someone like a Khanna or any member of the Democratic Party, but Khanna specifically says is a priority economically and morally, on abortion? What do you do with all of the other compromises that aren't listed? How does that coalition work, and bring me through the end point?
Well, and I'm not a huge fan of either of them, actually. You could also say Thomas Massie on H-1Bs. You could say Thomas Massie on immigration also.
You could say him on Israel also, as far as his biggest donor. It's not AIPAC, but a lot of influence.
Certainly. Certainly. But what I'm referring to is maybe more something like Trump 2016, who is basically a populist. And you look at Trump in 2016, and to me, that's kind of the prescription, where it's like in 2016, he comes out and he says, we're going to get the money out of politics. He says, I'm not going to take donor money. I'm not going to take super PAC money. I don't listen to special interests. He says, law and order, close the border. As far as health care, he didn't even give a plan. He said, we'll just take care of everybody. He said, we'll get rid of the lines around the states and we'll just take care of everybody. Who even knows what that means? And he says, we're going to put America first in foreign policy. Now, I think that, here's the thing. I'm under no illusions. We're not going to win 80% of the left or 40% or even 30%. But I'm thinking that if we can win, because I think there are a lot of people on the far left or even some of the abundance liberals, they're getting tired of a lot of the far left too. There's a lot of these liberals in the center that are saying, how are you going to have public transportation when you have people getting stabbed in the neck and there's no police? Like, we can't defund the police and even have these cities that we want to have. I think there's a lot of people on the far left, too, that are saying, you know, maybe the woke has gone too far.
I'm sorry, was that a quote? I may made it. Did Ro Khanna say that, or was that just a general?
No, I'm not talking specifically about Ro Khanna. That's just an example.
Because when I hear it, I almost thought you said I was like, oh yeah, that sounds like something a liberal would say, like stab the cop in the neck.
No, when people are being stabbed in the neck by like black people, for example.
Oh, that's also something I could hear a leftist supporting. But yes, okay, go on. I didn't know if it was specific. Okay, yeah.
Well, and here's the thing. I mean, fundamentally, it comes down to the fact that let's just talk about it in general. So that's my prescription. It's like populist Trump, and let's just get a small percentage of the left liberals, who I think have come a long way in the past 5 years since COVID. But I would say that in general, I think maybe where we disagree is I look at this Republican team.
So what just happened there is Nick, in 3 moves, dismantled his own argument. So move number 1. Stephen Khanna asked, okay, Nick, you've just given us some sort of prescription that is Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna, and you mentioned that they will have 90% approval and whatever. So let's talk about Ro Khanna and his stated positions on the Second Amendment, First Amendment, reparations, and abortion, and transitioning of kids. How are you going to address that? Nick doesn't answer it. Instead, he says, well, I'm not a huge fan of either of them. Okay, fair. But just to be clear, you did name these names, and they are sitting congressmen. And they were not just hypotheticals, but that's fair. You're not a fan of them. Okay, that's fair. Move number 2. Instead of addressing question number one, he jumps to Thomas Massie and starts telling us Massie has problems too regarding H-1Bs and immigration. I think he forgot that he's supposed to defend him. And Crowder piles on that, his donors and Israel, not just the AIPAC, and he agrees to it. So that was a confession. That wasn't even a defense. He's supposed to defend them, but he basically admitted that they are not viable options. Move number 3. So instead of addressing Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna, he completely abandons them and pivots abruptly to Trump 2016 and saying that that's the right direction, that's the blueprint. But I thought Nick's been bagging Trump, like the whole debate. Nick's been telling us last couple of years that Trump failed us. Don't even vote for him. So which is it? Like, I'm deeply confused. Is he for Trump or is he not for Trump? If he's not for Trump, what is the alternative? I'm failing to get it.
What has it actually done for us? Because you seem to be defending like, well, we're supposed to vote Republican and we're supposed to say, well, this is better than the alternative.
No.
And he's making these wins. Well, hang on. And I look at it and say, it's been 10 years of Trumpism. And, I know Biden brought them in, but we're 10 million illegals up since Biden, and there's no mass deportations. I look at the wars. We're getting into more wars, not fewer. He wanted to keep us in Afghanistan and Bagram. He's building bases in Syria. We're getting into Venezuela. I look at what we have not done in 10 years, and I say, this is a prescription where it hasn't been working. And so I'm very against this line where you say, well, we're going to vote Republican and we're going to, what exactly? I mean, what's your prescription? If Trump is failing us miserably, what are we supposed to do here?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing is I don't agree that our representatives are all failing us miserably. I think they failed in quite a few ways. If you're talking about like the Johnsons of the world and the Rhinos, absolutely. But the things that you just listed, and I would, again, ask you for your prescription because I give mine Monday through Friday. I mean, every day, 11 a.m. Eastern. I've done one on voting, what we need to do. I've done one on immigration, done one on big tech and Section 230. I'm very curious as to your prescriptions so that people can contrast them. You mentioned law and order. I don't know of any president who sent the National Guard in as aggressively when we're talking about D.C. and Chicago. That way you talk about law and order. You're talking about
in Chicago.
Well, I'm saying any effort being made. I know what we've lived through as far as what Ro Khanna would support: Black Lives Matter, the Police and Justice Act. Again,
BLM
I don't think
happened under Trump in 2020.
So let me ask you, what's your prescription? Why hopscotch all the people who I think watching right now would agree with you if they think that you're on board with them on LGBTQ, on immigration, on Second Amendment rights, on First Amendment rights? Why hopscotch then to compromise with someone who has actively fought to destroy all those things like a Ro Khanna? Wouldn't it make more sense to form a coalition with more than half the country who already exists? Because you don't want to take them for granted. Take Trump out of it. I'm talking about the people, the voters. What's your prescription?
I would say that it's a structural problem, which is that the reason, first of all, I mean, we have to deal with the fact that Trump is not delivering. Like, if you don't want to gish gallop, let's just start there. You say, well, I don't think it's a complete failure. Yeah, it is. And you bring up BLM. BLM happened in 2020 because Trump let it happen, because Sean Hannity was calling him every day and saying, this is better for us in November if BLM burns down the cities. So the summer of love happened in 2020 when Trump was president. And then Trump comes back.
No, it started under Barack Obama with going back to Trayvon Martin.
The George Floyd summer of love.
Yeah, it was a continuation.
Well, I think they kind of picked up on it. Don't you think? It wasn't like it was ongoing.
I was there, and I had people on my show back then with Hands Up, Don't Shoot. And I remember the assassination of the Dallas PD. Donald Trump was elected, specifically his first term, because of how disruptive Black Lives Matter was and law and order. And I would say there was significantly more than under Barack Obama. But if you say they're the same, that's just where we disagree.
Well, wait, what are we debating about? I mean, in the George Floyd summer of love, maybe I'm wrong about the calendar. It was in 2020 when Trump was president, and it was the worst, arguably the worst BLM violence, I think, in the 21st century. I think that was worse, actually, than Mike Brown or Trayvon Martin. And Trump was president, and he didn't intervene because he was told it'd be better for him. And now in 2025, there's no National Guard. He chickened out on that. He chickens out on all that stuff. He was going to send him to Chicago, going to send him to every major city. Never happened. Even here. You know, they're doing the deportations in Broadview here in Illinois. They brought in like 400 National Guard, and ICE is still getting chased. And they got boxed in by a bunch of different protesters, one with a semi-automatic rifle. There's no law and order. Irina Zarutska died under Trump. The crime in New York under Trump. The crime in Chicago under Trump. It's a failure. And we're 10 years in. And so you say, what is it going to take? Because we elected him once, twice.
Just because this is the point I'd like to address when you say Irina Zarutska, and obviously we've covered that, and I think we're in agreement when you look at the judge and you look at the man who was released, I believe, 14 times, right, under the guise of equity, Black Lives Matter, precisely the kinds of policies that only exist because they have been supported by the radical left who run the entire Democrat Party, right? So, yeah, some of that happened under Trump's watch, and I agree. He's definitely far from perfect, and I think he's failed in a lot of ways. But who has been orchestrating? You talk about these constructionists, right? They want that, and people like Khanna, people who you talk about in your coalition, it's their raison d'etre. So why hopscotch the voters who would not vote for that coalition precisely for the reasons we're discussing? Because they're against all of it, because Trump hasn't done enough to fight. I mean, COVID happened under Trump too. Huge mistakes. Fauci, awful. But I certainly think that 20 million illegal aliens in 4 years is worse than a reduction of 90-something%. I certainly think that the people who orchestrated Black Lives Matter and the people who ran those cities and the people who have blocked ICE from doing anything is worse than the guy sending in ICE with any effort at all.
But let's talk about even that. Why do we get all these people from Venezuela? Because Trump hired John Bolton to destroy Venezuela's economy, and then on his last day in office gave Venezuela temporary protected status. That was one of his last acts as president, and that means they can't be deported. And then you got 6 million Venezuelans in an exodus, and how many of them ended up here? And by the way, Trump ran in 2016 saying, we're going to build the wall and we're going to solve immigration. It didn't happen. There's no wall. He didn't solve it. What he did was executive orders, which Biden immediately overturned when he took power and then brought in 10 million. Okay, so Trump gets elected again. What does Trump do? You're right, he did secure the border. That's true. But we're 10 million deep. That's a little too late. He promised mass deportations. We've had maybe 300,000 deportations this year. Is that going to go up during the midterm elections? Is that going to go up when everybody's running in the primary in 27? I don't see it happening. And either way, it hasn't happened. So this is my frustration where I'm like, I was with you in the first term. As in the first term, when I was in college, I was like, yeah, like vote for Trump, never coming down. If he falls short, we'll go on Twitter and tell him to try better. But 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, you know, Republicans have called for our vote all these times and things are not getting better like at all. And that's sort of the frustration where I start to say, let's turn the table around. And I'm not hopscotching over the voters. I want all the right-wing voters. What I want to hopscotch is the donors. I want to hopscotch the party. which is the RNC, which is little tech, Silicon Valley, which is the Israel lobby, which is Wall Street, because they're driving the stuff. Like the reason that Trump is not really what he delivers, or what he promises, is because if you were to deport all these illegal aliens, it's going to be bad for big agriculture, Wall Street, inflation might tick up, and so
Marjorie Taylor Greene's construction company.
That's right. Yeah, 100%. And that's why I want to bypass.
Okay, so bypass. So, and nobody is saying that President Trump is perfect. And I'm not a micro-political guy, a cultural guy, largely. And I think there's been a major shift culturally. I mean, half of all gay characters are going to be going away, and GLAAD is lamenting that. I don't know how much more happy I can get. I think that the replatforming is a big thing. Right? I mean, as someone who's been also debanked, demonetized through PayPal, Shopify, all that, very similar to you. The fact that you're able to sit here now and have this conversation, I mean, it took a lot of work from a coalition people like me, turning down a $50 million contract and migrating the world's biggest conservative, right-leaning nationalist YouTube channel over to Rumble so that you're able to do that. That's a win, right? And you could look at that like a light switch, deplatformed, including the president himself, replatformed. To me, that's probably the biggest thing. The fact that you are able to sit here and talk when you weren't.
But I got replatformed under Biden. I got my Twitter account back in May 24. Musk bought Twitter in 2022. Right. And Rumble really started to grow after Trump got banned in 21. That's when all the little tech money jumped in, because they said, we're going to do True Social, Trump Media Group, Rumble, these things. So, now that Trump is back in office, there's might be more censorship. Like you have people
But Elon Musk put you back specifically. He bought that to balance the powers that be. I mean, there was a point in time.
But it wasn't Trump.
But that's the reason for it, right? There's no world in which you're replatformed unless Donald Trump is running again and someone like Elon Musk sees an already existing populist movement. That is important. And right now, this will actually be clips on YouTube. That could never have happened. I mean, I was literally deplatformed for having Carrie Lake on in a midterm. That's why we couldn't stream the elections. So to say that, well, that's because of Biden, are you giving Biden credit for Elon Musk buying X and bringing you back? Because I think that you got to give some credit here if you want to build a coalition. Can you build a coalition with the people going, hey, we are really anti-censorship and we're really hesitant to get back in bed with the party that pushed for all of it? Because there are other people, not as popular as you, who've also been deplatformed and replatformed as a result.
No, I'm not giving Biden credit. All I'm saying is you attribute that to Trump or for Republicans being in power. All I'm saying is one's got nothing to do with the other. And actually, it was a response. Musk buying Twitter was a reaction to the overreach of the Democrats because they banned the president from Twitter. And I would add to that also.
Okay, so a lot has happened there. Khanna basically told him, Nick, you've got the platform now. You have a seat at the table because of the populist right. You were deplatformed. Now you're back. That's a win. And that happened because of the populist right for the people like Musk, Trump, and myself. And Nick's answer to that is, I got replatformed under Biden. As if Biden replatformed him. But to be fair, he does correct himself like a second later, okay? It was a reaction to the Democrat, which means it was the populist right that created the conditions for Musk to buy Twitter, which means the very movement Nick's hating on is the same movement that gave him his platform back. And yet Nick can't even give it credit. So this is a problem when someone has the burn it down mentality. So he has to erase every single win to justify the revolution. Replatforming doesn't count. Border crossing down 93%, not enough. Cultural shift on gender ideology, who cares? 2 million deportations and self-deportations? Fake data. So at some point, if you're dismissing everything like that, you're not being honest anymore. You're being stubborn. And here's a thing that should bother everyone. And I am very fond of Nick. But Nick's sitting on a platform that exists because of the movement he's trashing. Having a conversation that would have been impossible 3 years ago. He's reaching an audience that he was cut off from entirely. And his take is that none of this matters because Trump didn't deliver everything. The thing is, nobody delivers everything. Nobody ever has. The question is not, did we get everything we wanted? I think the right question is, are we moving in the right direction or are we going backwards? And if you can't tell the difference between imperfect progress and the people who are actively trying to destroy you, then your frustration has turned into something else. It's turned into bitterness. It's turned into an excuse to never be satisfied. And nothing healthy can be built on that. Now, in the next video, this debate reaches the next level. So Khanna asks point blank then, Nick, what is your alternative? What is your prescription? And Nick gives an answer that is going to make you rewind it twice because it's not what you think. Subscribe if you're new. I'll see you in the next one.